coerce people into believing this narrative by following to the idea that mental resilience is easily attainable, right? So those who are focused on trying to fit this social narrative would then be coerced to try this type of change. And always these advertisements would advertise them as being a fast and reliable way of changing, but rather they would only be a change to be perceived as mentally resilient and not actually being one, right? So what's the impact of this then? One is that it wastes money. This is the more superficial one. But then the other impact is that it instills in the applicants for these programs that they a sense of shame because they wouldn't be actually become resilient, but they still want to try to fit the social expectation of it. And also this would be exacerbated by these internet teachers because they would shame them for this failure, calling them it's their failure, not the programs, and therefore exacerbate their mental unresilience. Okay? And on to my second point, which is that it actually delays the actual treatment for these mental illness or mental incapabilities, right? Because social expectation dictates that not being resilient is a bad thing. That means people would be scared to admit it or maybe altogether just bury whatever they are thinking beneath layers of pretense, right? What does it look like? For example, a kid who is bullied at school, they might follow this narrative of being unresilient, being bad, and therefore be afraid to talk to their teachers or talk to their parents about this. And as we can see, when they don't admit it, they hide it in their heart, right? So there will be two consequences of this hiding. One is that they go to fast solutions, as I dictated before, are those courses who offer like the mirage or fast resolution, but actually exacerbates your problem. And the second thing is that they never get treated, and they will go down this downward spiral where they continue to become more and more unresilient, but then showing themselves, presenting themselves as a very resilient person, right? So the impact of this is that they're not going to seek for help. And what does that mean? That means more mental illness, more people will get depressed and potentially be prone to self-harm or be prone to suicide. And the other thing is that it pushes, even if in the best case that they actually endure through this problems and they become a very harsh person, they would still push this narrative that because they succeeded despite having these insecurities, they push to their children that being mentally resilient is a good trait, even if you suffer a lot of problems. That means this would not be just a superficial problem, but a generational one, where more and more narratives of trying to pretend to be mentally resilient will be on the table. And the third point is that it disproportionately pressures the minorities, right? Because we have to admit that it is easier to be mentally resilient for some than for others. For example, if you're Jeff Bezos, you're a rich Caucasian who owns an entire company, it is obviously easier for you to be mentally resilient than, say, a black woman working in a shop, right? Because the social ranking, the race, the gender, everything is different. That means everyone has different levels of obstacles to go through to become mentally resilient, right? But if we're pushing this narrative that mentally resilient people are always better, that means a lot of these people would be ignored. Simply, they would be told to simply just suck it up, right? Because the impact of this is that instead of focusing on people in need, instead of helping them, we would just put on a tag that they're mentally unresilient, just ignore them, right? And these people would get ignored by society and then just left to rot. Which is why these are reasons why we're very
Thank you for that speech. I welcome Leader of Opposition here. Wait, if you guys stand there, make sure to speak loud so we can all hear you.
Was I not loud?
No, you were loud, but this doesn't take it. And then if you guys are a quieter person, you guys can here. Yeah. Or like there. You can move the chair over and use it as a podium. Yeah.
start by defining what mentally resilient really means. So being mentally resilient means that you are able to cope with the hardships of life, and you're able to accept the fact that, for example, your boyfriend broke up with you, or like be able to um, to help yourself to understand this situation and be able to accept it mentally. And so the purpose of being mentally resilient is to um, like help people accept these hardships and um, like um, to help them understand what the problem is, and then go through the process of um, understanding understanding it, and being able to cope with it. And we're saying that resilience is about being able to learn from it and change lots of things that happen in life, they just happen. And so on our side, resilience means that you're able to like mentally accept the fact and also learn from it to further move, be able to move on with things in life. Also, we are not saying that we want people to avoid it and just try to forget about it, but we're saying that we want people to go through the full process to move on about things, not just put it aside and try to avoid it. That is not what being mentally resilient means. So we're teaching people to accept things in life, as I said earlier, and even if society has help, or they help you to like like you know, like even if they give you help, it is still hard to accept the process of, and we're saying that we want people to be able to cope with things themselves. Yeah, because that's just the a journey of life, and we want people to be able to move on with things. And also so government side is saying that being mentally resilient is avoiding things, which I explained is not. Um, and so basically, we think that like we want people to like um, not avoid these situations which can make it worse. And we're saying that we want them to in the future be able to cope with these hardships more, and not just be the same and set it aside, because that's not how you um, like that's not how people become more resilient people. So for all these reasons, I think that our side thinks that being mentally resilient is being able to cope with these things, and it's about the process of moving on and learning through the natural process. Thank you.
Thank you for that speech, Earl from CPO. Here.
My speech will start in 3, 2. My speech will start in 3, 2. I don't think the first speaker on the other side truly understands our arguments. You're not just really criticizing the pure existence of being mentally resilient. You're saying that the societal expectation, the universal societal expectation should be expecting every single person in the room to be mentally resilient. So how to propose. The framing the first survey was being mentally resilient was able to move forward with partnerships in life, for example, accepting a breakup. But I think it is not a exclusive thing on any side that, for example, you have to be mentally resilient to move through hardships. I think you can still cry and thrash and throw up over a breakup, and you can still accept over the fact that your boyfriend is an asshole. I don't think being mentally resilient is required to move through harsher lives. I even think in some cases, not being mentally resilient is even better, because mentally resilient in some cases can mean you're blocking out some emotions that society deems as useless. For example, anger or sadness. For example, when you experience a breakup, a mentally resilient, societal expected person will be like, oh, I'm fine. But deep down, they're not. On our side, we can still exist, we can still support mentally resilient to some degree. We also think that it is okay to accept your own emotions and then set some facts so you can grow and learn from experiences and be a better person overall. And now I'll begin my two pieces of argument, which is one, the societal expectation of being mentally resilient calls for systematic reform, and two, it reinforces toxic gender norms. So first up, why does the societal expectation of being mentally resilient cause reform? Individual resilience shifts the burden of survival on individuals, not workplaces or environments. I think there are two really good examples of this. The first one is Japan. We all know Japan has an extremely toxic work environment where they have to work so late. You see the eye bags on Japanese people. You see multiple cases where Japanese people have to sleep in their offices just in case they get to at 6 a.m. And we all know that the highest suicidal rates in all countries are mostly East Asian countries, and one of the most prominent ones is Japan. Why? Because with all these expectations of being mentally resilient, the workplaces often exploit Japanese workers. They squeeze out every last drop of them. They squeeze out every drop of them, causing depression and suicidal thoughts. And under the narrative of you have to be mentally resilient, you have to be a big, strong person, the society doesn't urge the workplaces to reform. They don't say, oh, maybe you should have a policy that can't work 2 days. They don't say, oh, maybe you should start treating your workers better, have better healthcare, for example. Instead, they tell the individuals to be a better person. They tell individuals to stop whining, be more mentally resilient, stop acting like you're the victim here. You sign up for this. This is all the type of reactions that the other side is promoting, where we're trying to avoid. On our side, it will be like, oh, we don't have mentally resilient all the time. So when we see Japanese workers suffering, we say maybe it's time for Japanese workforces to change. Maybe it's time for some. And the second example, I think we can all relate, since we are in Chinese high schools, I assume. But I'm going to talk about Chinese high schools because they're significantly worse than Chinese high schools. So Chinese high schools all depend on one test, night studies, 补习班, all of these have high pressure on Chinese students, and that is why Chinese students also have extremely high suicidal rates. But but instead of reforming the education system in China because of this good narrative, expecting everyone to be emotionally resilient, they tell the students to develop. I think through these two examples, I have perfectly demonstrated why our side will always achieve better universal results in terms of students and workers, because we don't expect them to be a man and a false man all the time. We can accept when someone can't take it anymore, and we can accept when the society and the system made a mistake, and we can accept reform. And the impact is that, and the impact on their side, when they keep imposing these societal expectations of being mentally resilient, is that real issues are being ignored because they're first of all, they're not mentally resilient, they're not strong enough. This looks like the Japanese example I gave. They don't change the system, not because they're for something, it's because their mind doesn't think that it's on the system's fault. So that ignores real issues, and which causes what they call social stagnancy, not going forward, and no evolution, which means the society regresses. And talking about society regresses, which moves on to my other point, which it reinforces toxic gender norms. So we all know, I'm going to talk about the most common one, which is if you're a man, my mom has told me if you're a man, you can't cry, right? You have to be extra muscle up, buff, right? Carry all the big boxes of women. So when there's a toxic societal expectation of being mentally resilient, it reinforces these toxic gender norms of boys can cry or express their feelings and need to be seen as a man, or else they're automatically deemed as weak. This is extremely toxic because we shouldn't be holding up these societal gender norms, because the first thing you have said, they automatically shut themselves down. They don't seek help from other side. Before one minute, and then you guys go 6 minutes. You guys have any realize? Guys? No. Okay. So the automatically shut down. They don't seek help, which causes again depression and anxiety. And the second one is a bit. No, the second one is a bit special, which is about women. So when we have this weird narrative about everyone has to be mentally resilient, it eradicates the entire meaning of feminism. Why? Because the meaning of feminism should be we shouldn't judge a woman's choice of doing something. But because of this narrative that every woman should be mentally resilient, so now the society has turned feminism into every woman should be a big girl boss CEO, or else you're falling into the trap of men, even though maybe it's your choice, you want to be a housewife. Maybe it's your choice, you want to work at home, anything like that. So now what happens is that you're imposing male gender roles on women purely under the brackets of the societal definition of being mentally resilient. So now mentally resilient is considered weak. The women choose jobs like housewives and medical communism, and because on our side we support that women shouldn't be judged for their choices. And again, this induces societal regression. In our side, we give multiple examples on why one, it induces societal regression, and two, it causes layer harms in the developed society. Developing and developed doesn't matter. In every single angle, having a universal societal expectation of being mentally resilient can cause what's that? No problem to propose. Thank you.
Thank you for that speech. I welcome Deputy Leader of Opposition. Here, here.
Okay, opposition's kind of negative case with no countermodel is kind of hard to rebut, but we're going to try and do this. Firstly, let's clear up one major misunderstanding that government has of our side. So what my PML has already said is that that mentally resilient means that to accept the hardships and challenges of life, realize that is part of the journey that is life, and to live and to move on, learn from it, to live a life of relative fulfillment. Okay, why is this? I mean, if you want to be strong, you first have to acknowledge that there is a weight. So obviously, the acceptance part is already key to the entire concept of being mentally resilient. Okay, so this is the main misunderstanding of which kind of destroys opposition government's entire case. but we're going to move on. Firstly, the opposition kind of has a counter model, which is that the society can accept mental health issues. I don't know what this looks like or how they do that, but that works, I guess. We're going to, even if this works, and opposition and narratives are, however, narratives are able to be misused either way, especially about mental health. And this might, and under opposition's logic of where, you have mental problems, I have mental problems, but we're just not going to talk about it. In this case, what is going to, they're going to be biased against, there's going to be a counter effect of which people who have mental problems are going to will band together, and this might cause bias against those who don't have mental health problems. But this is kind of periphery. However, the party we're most trying to help here is the most important party, which is the common people who struggle with mental health issues. So it's probably pretty well established that the problem that exists here is that certain things cannot be changed. You cannot change like things of free will. You being laid off or partner breaking up with you. Those things cannot be changed. However, so the main thing is not to just accept it, because accepting it will not change anything. But they'll just, if you just accept, oh yeah, it exists. You're just going to be sad. It changes nothing, and it does not help the most vulnerable party. And what my first speaker has proposed is to focus on better ways, and we do concede to the fact that it may have been misused, but as I previously said before, narratives are going to be misused away with an example on their side. To focus on, so instead what we should do is to focus on better ways to push resilience, right? This will look like such schools teaching ways of how to cope with mental health issues, of how and teaching ways how to properly accept and go through the process of grieving, etc., etc. Because at the end of the day, despite whatever government wants to say about accepting mental health, or and being anxious is fine, being depressed is fine, whatever all that, at the end of the day, despite all of the society helping you, if you yourself do not put in the effort to overcome and learn and change, you yourself are not going to overcome these mental health issues, which is directly contradictory to what mental health itself, the purpose of mental health, which is to live a life of relative fulfillment is. Later. Okay. Mental health fulfillment is. So, what does opposition's world look like? Government's world look like? It is essentially a world where you have half the process. It's there, despite it being murky. It's basically just so even if we take opposition's best case to say that the society accepts it, it's like, oh, this is socially acceptable. You yourself still do not overcome the root of the problem, which is you have depression or you have anxiety, and with this and without overcoming it, the process of building up that Prime Minister has pointed out about, it'll eventually. Building up, eventually it will break. That process still exists, especially with the fact that their definition of mentally resilient is to be calm, reserved, and responsible and reliable. This is especially obvious to how government misunderstands the case, which is because being calm and reserved, it has the connotation that you are avoiding this emotion. That is inherently contradictory to the idea of being mentally strong or mentally resilient. Okay, and what happens under our side? It is people who are focused on accepting, yes, this exists, but then we have to overcome it. We have to have a conclusion to this, a circle around, and so. And at the end of the day, we help the vulnerable party, which and have an actual constructive way to actually overcome mental health issues instead of the murky case that government has brought to uphold.
Thank you for that speech. I welcome Government Whip. Here.
The opposition comes up and tells us that this depression, this mental health that exists from the social, that are created from the social expectation of always mental resilience is actually something that we must overcome, we must face. Very proud to be here. So in my speech, I'm going to start off with some rebuttals and then moving on, actually some clarifications, and then moving on to the two clashes I have identified in this topic, and then in the end, the debate. So I'll start off about their all. So our CBM also come up and tell you that we're actually just simply supporting the idea that this social expectation of mental health itself is not beneficial to the society as a whole. It's not beneficial, not just at a society level, but also at an individualistic level. And they all come up and tell us that their stakeholders are these normal people in this case. And then they tell us that mentally resilient means that it is the idea to accept a new one. From my own perspective, I don't see how this different from our explanation, which is that you should not be negative when you're facing these failures. It also means that you should be accepting all these difficulties, but at last you have to stand up. And the ultimate goal of remaining strong, the ultimate goal of appearing to be okay and calm is the same idea with the word move on as in your definition. And then moving on to what they have in play, they tell us that societal expectations, I think they agree on societal expectation creates all these mental resilience. However, they say that with all these free wills, there are going to be things that happen. And in fact, this mental health itself is what we have to face. They say that instead of just simply indulge in this, we can instead of just simply recognizing this sadness or anger within ourselves. I think they say that you need to use alternative ways you should by just simply not indulging in this. And I'm going to move on to the two questions I have identified from this debate. First of all, the first question is the impact of the stakeholders of the debate. So I think it's more reasonable to say that our stakeholders are the correct ones, which are those ones that are suffering from these mental illness. There are those ones that are not that mentally resilient. Simply because these people that are already mentally resilient within a society, they are going to remain the way of thinking they have. And it is that these people who are actually suffering from this self-doubt that's going to be truly affected by this social expectation that we should really focus on. So what does our side tell you? Our side comes up and tell you a total of five impacts onto these people. First of all, the misinterpretation. The detail will come up and tell us that this misinterpretation exists in all kinds of social expectation. But we said that this one is especially problematic because the ideology of mental resilience itself is not bad. We have stated that, but it is that social expectation to say that you have to remain in that state. It is not okay if you're not in that state. It is a neglect of the opposite state that is very problematic to the society as a whole. And then second, we know that there is going to be this implicit shamefulness and hinder of help or of reaching out to all these people. We tell you that there are going to be kids that are not willing to, kids or adults that are not willing to reach out and they're really facing all these situations. They're going to be looking for all these fast solutions, which are bad because of economic concerns and also because it worsens the weakness within themselves, the self-doubt that they have. And then B, because they don't look for help, and then C, because even if they succeed, the cycle of the ideology that mental resilience achieved, could easily achieve itself, could be continued throughout like family relationships or like friendships. And we also tell you that this goes on to specific ones that are mentally weak, which are the minorities. These are people who really need help. They're oppressed within all these systematic thoughts. DPM also comes up and hearing that is going to hinder all these social reforms. If you are going to say that, are just going to push your social expectation and tell you that because you have to be strong, it is your problem that you are weak under this system. It is not the problem that this whole system should be changed. So we said that with this ideology in mind, it's very hard for people to be what they're right now. And last, we tell you that with all these social expectations in mind, we're also imposing this toxic gender rules upon the whole society as well. First of all, it pushes onto these males that they cannot be weak simply because of the mental resilience. And on the other side, in the more feministic side, we tell you that it's actually putting on all these traditional male gender roles back onto these women and telling them that if we're not going to be acting strong and acting strong within the workforce, it indicates that you're not struggling for yourselves. You're just like willing to be suppressed under this inequality of gender roles. And that's moving on to the way, which is on their side. They tell us that you have to find a solution instead of just recognizing the problem. But on our side, I think on our side, it means to. I think on our side, our understanding on this motion is that you will simply not just like even neglect the own problem. It will also not move on. It is different from your side. We also point out a lot of levels of impact, negative impact it has on the society, which they to this point have not come up with any. Very proud to do this.
Thank you for that speech. Welcome, opposition whip. Here, here.
Throughout this debate, government team has been talking about how this narrative around mental health has been misused, how people have used it to try to push these toxic narratives, how people have used it to try to invalidate people's mental health experiences, and how it leads to more toxicity. But here's the thing, right? We believe that, first off, like our second speaker said, we believe that there are these narratives around mental health can always be misused regardless of what side you're on. Why? Because, like we said, people feel like they want to be strong. People want to feel like that, like they aren't like everybody else, and that they can do what other people can. So there will always be this narrative on either side of the house on how mental health can like be easily overcome, or narratives invalidating it, things like this. But we argue that that even if some people use the narrative of resilience to try to even if some people try to use it to try to invalidate mental health, we believe that first off, it's still the best option when it comes to our narrative around mental health, and we believe that it prevents people from cracking under depression. What do we mean by this? Well, like we said before, right? There's some things that humans simply can avoid. Things like losing a loved one. Things like losing your job. Things that are outside of our control. And as a society, we believe that what society should do is to teach people that even if you can't avoid these things happening to you, you can still avoid the fallout and avoid the turmoil that comes from this. And it comes from
and it comes from teaching people how to cope. And the thing is that resilience doesn't have to be toxic, right? We believe that people can like find coping mechanisms. Yeah, well, we believe that people can find coping mechanisms and they can find ways to heal after mental health after mental health issues without resorting to this sort of toxicity. Before I go on.
Do you agree that when tragic things happen, sometimes just to let it all out and cry it out?
Wait, sorry.
Do you agree that sometimes when tragic things happen, isn't the best thing to just let it all out and cry?
Well, here's the thing, right? Sometimes you can try to let. Sometimes when these pressures and these things keep building up over time, we believe that like it can lead to people cracking under the pressure, right? There's a lot of these like pressures, a lot of things that build up on people. We believe that if people end up like lashing out or end up or if people end up letting it all out in ways that might not be as good. It might, in some instances, for some people, sure, they might let it out and they'll be fine. But a lot of other people, there's still people who, because they haven't been taught ways to deal with it hopefully, or ways to try to cope with these feelings. When that happens, they turn to other ways to try to cope with their mental health because they don't know what else to do. What this means is people turn into things like violence, or people who alienate their family and friends, or people who try to turn to other, or people who turn to maybe like worse influences in society in an attempt to try to heal from it. If we as a society do not try to emphasize different ways to cope and heal after various mental health experiences, we believe that it's only going to lead people to try to find their own ways to cope. Now, this is why we believe that clash on like which side is better able to help people deal with mental health. It falls better to us because we believe that by teaching people these ways to cope and by teaching people ways to overcome these feelings, we're able to create a society overall that where people avoid having to resort to maybe worse ways of dealing with mental health after you like crack or after you lash out. Before I go on. Yes.
Do you believe that having this social expectation of mental resilience doesn't mean that you're going to give them ways of coping? It's just an ideology that doesn't give any mechanization of it.
Well, here's the thing, right? When you have when you have this sort of like belief, when you have this sort of like expectation to be able to cope, obviously there will be bad actors who try to manipulate this narrative to try to invalidate mental health. But we believe that either way, there are going to be people who try to invalidate mental health experiences, who try to invalidate, who try to make it seem like mental health isn't as big of a deal. But the thing is that when you teach people, when you tell people like, hey, you should try to be resilient, try to deal with like the pressure that is going on in your life. What we can incentivize is for people to try to find healthier ways of coping and healthier ways of trying to deal with their mental health. The government team hasn't provided like another alternative way of dealing with mental health. We believe that by trying to teach people that that like the end goal should be always trying to like put things behind you and should try to move on. Maybe it won't be instant. Maybe it won't take like a day or two to heal from mental illnesses. I believe that the ultimate goal of people in general should be to try to move on no matter how long it takes. Because at the end of the day, that is how people end up trying to free themselves from their trauma, from experiences that they've had before. Any other alternative where people are taught that maybe it's okay to like hang on to these destructive thoughts. Maybe it's okay to like just like have these thoughts for a long time. In a world where this happens, we believe that people are going to people are just going to carry these experiences with them forever and ever. We believe that that's not a good thing, right? We believe that people should try to find ways to be able to leave what's happened in the past, to be able to recover and thrive in the future. And like I said before, even if it doesn't take even if it can't be accomplished in like a day or 2 days, 3 days. We believe that the end goal, the long term, should be to try to push this idea of resilience and coping and moving on. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We're moving on to replies portion of the debate. Welcome opposition reply. Here.
Um, Mental resilience is not evil. It's just misunderstood. So government's case is a prime example of how to completely misunderstand the nature of what it is to be mentally resilient. So in our case, we tell you that this narrative itself is to learn and to overcome. That is to accept, learn, and overcome. That is the main narrative that we're trying to pull here. And my third speaker then tells you why this is commonly misused, which is to make people feel special, to make people feel welcomed in no matter what form that is. And this is not going to change about humanity. And I told you in my second speech that this is able to be misused on either side of the house. So this negates at least mitigates the effect that their opposition's entire case, which hinges on the fact that which hinges entirely on the fact, with no positive material or counter model, that it is definitely 100% going to be misused. Okay, and then we tell you in this case that we have the entire process of overcoming mental health issues, which helps the most vulnerable party, which is the common people who struggle with mental health issues. Standing there, and we also give you examples and clear constructed on how this can be achieved. However, on the side of opposition, they automatically assume society can accept mental health issues with basically no mechanism as to how. This already means that we have a more solid, which added with the fact that they have not had any alternatives to how to overcome mental health challenges, and that they have not really challenged our definition of what of mental resilience. Also makes it so that we win this debate by being able to help the most vulnerable party, which is and about opposition's case, they might look like they're saying a lot. They're saying a lot of stuff like, oh, Japan's suicide rate. But if you really think about it, it's just like examples to how this narrative can be misused, and they're not really addressing the core problem, which is, how do we solve the problem, which we already have pointed out, which opposition, government also has not addressed like at all, and without really addressing these problems and without really engagement from the other side, it's kind of hard for second and third speaker to engage with you. And so in conclusion, our world provides like a full process. Well, kind of we admit to the fact that opposition may be right a bit. They got it half right, and therefore with our full rights and also being able to help the most vulnerable party and making the most positive change, we are proud to oppose.
Welcome, government reply.
My speech starts in 3, 2. I think the opposition might have misunderstood the motion a bit. The motion isn't about whether mental resilience is a good thing or not, or whether we should pursue mental resilience. Because for most of the cases, yes, mental resilience is a good thing, and people should pursue it. But the motion is that whether the social expectation of mental resilience is good, and particularly for the most vulnerable groups who are actually the ones who are suffering mentally, right? So let me just try to sum up the opposition's case here. They say that because mental resilience help people accept hardship and allow them to cope with it, allow them to accept things that are beyond their own control, and they also that's basically what they argue. They also claim that these claims could be misused on both sides, but we say that on our side we can allow the people who are mentally unresilient, because we say that they are accepted socially, they will be more inclined to speak out and therefore be more inclined to seek for help. Therefore, that also comes to our side. Basically, their whole case revolved around the claim that mental resilience is a good thing. Yeah, they dedicated the entire case to the benefit of emotional resilience, but they never cared to explain why the social expectation would really push for actual mental resilience. Whereas on our side, we have illustrated several ways that social expectation of mental resilience could not have the intended effect, or maybe have the opposite effect of what the narrative wanted to push for in the first place, right? We've talked about the claim where these ideas would be misinterpreted. We talked about these ideas where people would not actually seek for treatment, which went completely uncontested, and we talked about how it disproportionately pressures minority, which also was not contested at all. And we talked about how it prevents systematic changes in society, which was not contested. And then we also talked about how it exacerbates already existing social stereotypes. It also went completely uncontested. And because of these, we have illustrated so many different ways how this social expectation, although implemented with good virtue, would cause a lot of practical harm. Based on this, we are very proud to close our case.
Thank you everyone for the round. You guys can cross benches, shake the flower rock. And is it silent? It's not, right?
Nope.
And I'll call you guys when I am done.
We are screwed.
Really?